Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is 3 Buck Theater. Today is the 16th of July, 2018, and it's freaking crazy that the month is already halfway over, isn't it? But it's not only that. We're coming up into Comic-Con, right? This is Comic-Con week. It's going to be an insane, crazy week full of new news, new information, and all that stuff to consider. We even had the Uncharted fan film drop today, which I will be talking about in a separate video, and that has everything to do with the fact that it's way too much to cover right here with all of this. But first things first, I want to talk about Birds of Prey, which has now been revealed officially. There's been lots of talk about this, who's going to be in it, who's going to be featured, and what to expect. A lot of speculation over the last few months. We got a little bit of information today saying here that Margot Robbie film will feature Black Canary, Huntress, Cassandra Cain, and Renee Montoya. Also, and this is where I think it gets super fascinating, is that it's going to be featuring a villain that is a Batman character who's never before been seen on the big screen. So who could that be, maybe? Who could that be? Who could it possibly be? Black Mask. It's going to be Black Mask. He's a ground level bad guy, right? And these are ground level heroes and villains. It makes sense. It makes sense. It's certainly not going to be the Joker, right? We already got two of those in the DCEU. Jesus. Anyway, it says here, Black Canary, Huntress, Cassandra Cain, and Renee Montoya will join Harley Quinn's girl gang in the Margot Robbie film Birds of Prey. Robbie will produce and reprise her role from Suicide Squad. The film is centered around a revolving group of females, heroes, and villains, individuals with knowledge of the project said. So here's kind of how I take this, by the way. So I look at this like this. Okay, Suicide Squad was a villain ensemble that did moderately well, obviously, leading into this Harley Quinn spinoff that's also going to be an ensemble. Then you've got Justice League, which didn't do as well as they wanted. In fact, it did less money worldwide than Suicide Squad and cost a whole hell of a lot more. So they are clearly in a bit of a situation with that right there. So what is this? This is kind of like your middle ground, right? This is kind of like your mixture of the good and the bad, maybe thinking that they're going to find themselves in a better position in order to tell a better story. I got no idea. I feel DCEU is going to have to go back and really just kind of reapproach some of these characters, do it with smaller $50 million budgeted films as a way to very, very, very much experiment with certain things, obviously, but not put themselves in as much of a financial pickle as was the case with Justice League, where if there's a screw up, it's not the end of the day. Warner still has the largest market share of any studio out there, so they're not going to be hurting necessarily, but they're not really building up the brand in the way that they want to. Now, it also says here that the villain of Birds of Prey will be a Batman Comics villain who's never been on the big screen. Again, my theory on that is that it's going to be Black Mask. It just seems to make the most sense. Saying here, Birds of Prey will be produced by Cole & Co. Entertainment, Sue Kroll and Clubhouse Pictures, as well as Robbie. So here's a rundown of, just in case you don't know who these characters are. All right, Black Canary, a.k.a. Dina Laurel, is a fantastic hand-to-hand combatant who comes from a family of crime fighters. Her father, Larry Lance, was a police officer, while her mother, also named Dina, was the original Black Canary. Now, I know this is not going to be from the Arrowverse, is not going to be from the TV show. They don't want to intermix the two, which is really freaking stupid. It's so stupid at this point not to do that. It is so ridiculously damn stupid. Dare I say, or retarded. Because they need to. They want to beat Marvel. Right? And the way they beat Marvel is by actually having an interconnected television and film universe. That's how you beat Marvel. You beat them at their own game where they are currently falling. You go, wait, we don't have to worry about this the Marvel Television versus Marvel Studios, Ike Perlmutter versus Kevin Feige situation. We can just do what we want, but they're not going to, because the Arrowverse does very well, and I don't think Greg Berlanti would want to give up control in that particular regard. And look, I don't blame him. The guy runs like a whole bunch of shows for DC. I get it. Now you've got Helena Bertinelli, a.k.a. Huntress, is a vigilante operating out of Gotham. She was also in Arrow Season 1, but I'd be totally fine with recasting her. Cassandra Cain, one of the world's greatest martial artists, also a vigilante. I would argue switch her out with Katana, because Katana didn't get enough love in Suicide Squad, and then that would be a way to bring the two of them together, Harley and Katana, and have that kind of be a buddy film that way. Renee Montoya is a detective working for Gotham City PD. She is openly lesbian, and during during the New 52 comics, she takes on a costumed identity, becoming the Question. Okay. So here we're getting into this is going to get me in trouble, the diversity part of it, where you've got an openly lesbian superhero, which is fine. I have nothing against that whatsoever. But she takes on the costumed identity of the Question. Change that shit. Drop that shit. Don't put that shit in a movie. It'd be like bringing in Condiment King. No one is going to care. Now, Kathy Yan is set to direct it. She's known for writing and directing her feature debut film, Dead Pigs, which took home the World Cinema Dramatic Award for Ensemble Acting at Sundance earlier this year. And there's a reason why they mentioned that in this article, because this is going to be very much an ensemble piece, as we can tell. So you have your heroes, you've got your villains, you've got Harley Quinn, who's kind of a juxtaposition of the both, and then you're gonna have the bad guy, who's probably gonna end up being Black Mask. If it's never been seen on the big screen, I mean, there's a ton of bad guys. There are a ton of bad guys to be seen. But my question though is does the big screen, is that like applying to Keaton's Batman, the original 4 films there? Is it Nolan's? Is it Batman v Superman? I don't know. Like, who's it going to be? What if it was Lego Batman? Are they bringing in Lego Batman, which featured nearly all of the villains? Probably not that one at all. But from what we've seen, we can pretty much tell that it's going to be someone who's a little bit on the smaller side, and that would probably end up being Black Mask. I would say that's probably going to be Black Mask. I'm going to put money on it right now. I could be wrong, but I don't know if they're going to announce it at Comic-Con this week. The SDCC panel for DCEU on Saturday on Hall H should be interesting, and I'll be looking forward to what information comes out of that one. But this one's interesting because this just kind of dropped out today. I love the Street Fighter movie. This is why I want to talk about this. I love the Street Fighter film. I think it's a fun movie. It's one of my favorite campy films from the 1990s. It's almost infinitely quotable, terrible in its own right, great in its own right, and it featured Kylie Minogue as Cammy, therefore whatever, and Ming-Na Wen as Chun-Li. Again, totally on board with this, 100% down for it. But apparently, Van Damme was a drug-fueled mess during the Street Fighter shoot. Now, this to me is sad. This to me is sad because it's Jean-Claude Van Damme. Like, we knew he had problems, and I feel this is kind of shitting on him. But really, this is just an interview with Steven de Souza, who wrote and directed the film. He also wrote Die Hard and Commando, 2 of the greatest action films. Interestingly enough, Die Hard is, if I recall correctly, in essence to the book, it originally was going to be a sequel to Commando. I think that's true here. It was originally going to be a sequel, but they retooled it into what Die Hard began, or what it became, but that's why it's the same guy behind it. He was working off of basically the same source material. Now, it says in an interview with Steven de Souza, he described the process of trying to get Street Fighter completed, revealed that Jean-Claude Van Damme would often miss days of filming due to a nasty cocaine habit that was rumored to be upwards of 10 grams a day, which is about $10,000 a week. At the time, Van Damme was one of the biggest action stars in the world and could command high salaries that would allow him to purchase a lot of drugs. And that's crazy. I looked up to Van Damme like a mofo when I was a kid, right? I watched every one of his movies, even the ones I wasn't supposed to see. I loved Van Damme, and to find out he had a huge cocaine addiction is sad. But it shows you that there's part of it. That's a part of the Hollywood lifestyle. When you're that famous, that fast, and people just give you whatever you want, these sort of things happen. Now, de Souza says they ended up having to get Jean-Claude Van Damme a handler on set to keep the actor on track. However, the handler proved to be even worse influence on Van Damme, which later saw the actor trying to bring champagne on the set while filming. Van Damme was absent so much that the director had to figure out how to shoot other scenes while he was away. And this is essentially what he says here. He says, I couldn't talk about it at the time, but I can now. Jean-Claude was coked out of his mind. The studio had hired a wrangler to take care of him, but unfortunately the wrangler himself was a bad influence. Jean-Claude was calling in sick so much, I had to keep looking through the script to find something else to film. I couldn't just sit around for hours and waiting for him. On 2 occasions, the producers allowed him to go to Hong Kong, and on both occasions, he came back late. On Mondays, he just wasn't there at all. So essentially, Jean-Claude Van Damme was entirely a huge problem for the movie. But it goes on to say here that he wasn't the only problem that plagued the production. Because of budgeting issues, other actors weren't trained for the fighting scenes, often until the day of the scene, which was potentially hazardous. Also, if the studio was giving de Souza a hard time about the length of the shoot, he'd simply pick a page at random out of the script and tear it out. So that might be one of the reasons why this movie is as quote unquote bad as it seems. He was ripping out pages from the script, trying to shoot whatever he could that was around Jean-Claude Van Damme. Van Damme was coked out. Raul Julia was expensive. It was also his last film. That was unfortunate. Van Damme was expensive. And the thing is, at the end of the day, the movie still ultimately ends up becoming this big thing with this big piece of Americana for me. Not Americana, but like nerd culture, part of my childhood. I own the movie on Blu-ray. I watch it every so often. It's got a lot of great lines in it. It's a lot of fun to watch. And you know what? It aged pretty well considering. That being said, learning this new information, it does actually explain a lot about the movie that went wrong. And it goes to show you that celebrities oftentimes can be the biggest reasons why movies suck. Although, let's be fair here, the story for the movie probably wasn't like the greatest. I feel like it many times de Souza was maybe focusing on one-liners, similar to like what he did with Commando, right? Like, remember when I said I'd kill you last, or I promised to kill you last? I lied, drops him, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. I mean, like, you can see, like, there's a lot that de Souza puts into these things in order to make them quotable, to try to have those one-liners, which was, I think, very reminiscent of the 80s. And that might have been one of the reasons why this thing didn't really do as well. But speaking of movies that could do well or could not do well, this is a new one here. Duncan Jones appears to be making a Rogue Trooper movie from the Judge Dredd universe. And I'm not going to lie when I say this, guys. I could not care in the slightest. I'm still going to talk about it because I think it's interesting to an extent, but when you sit there and you go, should I jump into the 2080 comic book series and pull out some obscure character and make a movie about that and not have it be a sequel to Dredd? I don't think you're going to get many people to care, to be honest with you. Even if there are lots of fans of Rogue Trooper, which I'm sure there are they going to be enough to make this thing a financial success? Coming off of Duncan Jones, who last week or just teased that his next project would be a comic book movie. But he did post this video over the weekend, which I won't play here because it uses copyrighted material. And he talks about, should he do a Marvel movie or a DC movie, mentions Image Comics and Dark Horse. But then he talks about, the reviving Dredd, but it never got a sequel. And then he ends up taking off his helmet or his hat, and there's a blue mohawk and whatnot. So it does say here that the blue mohawk sported by Jones in the video, and the reference to 2080 comics is a dead giveaway. That's the signature hairstyle of none other than Tor Cyan, a blue-skinned, genetically engineered soldier tasked with fighting a planetary civil war on a world where the atmosphere has long since become toxic. Funny enough, he was drawn by Dave Gibbons, who also gave us Dr. Manhattan. So, I mean, not to say that comic artists don't oftentimes reference their past material. Hey, you got to play the hits where you can, right? But it says here that Tor Cyan isn't the title character of Rogue Trooper, but he's one of the featured soldiers in the comic book and was given his own comic book series as well. Instead, Rogue Trooper focuses on a similar blue-skinned, genetically engineered soldier named Rogue, who is joined by 3 other soldiers in the form of biochips. In this universe, a soldier's personality is downloaded when they die and used later to assist other soldiers. In this case, Rogue is accompanied by Gunner on his rifle, Bagman on his backpack, and Helm on his helmet. And that is interesting. That's interesting. I mean, I haven't read the comic. It could be good. But Duncan Jones is very hit or miss when it comes to his films, right? Like, everyone loved Moon, but Source Code was kind of hit or miss. Then there was Warcraft, which was well loved in China, but failed everywhere else. And then there was Mute, and Mute was a Netflix original that was kind of torn apart by the critics. The fans seemed to like it, but again, he's not necessarily looking pretty good for these films. And that might be why he wants to go and make a movie like this. Why he wants to maybe, because in that little teaser, he talks about like doing one for them, doing one for me. And he's referring to doing a big studio movie versus doing one for him. Well, wouldn't Mute be considered his movie for him, but done through Netflix? I don't know. I don't know. But this is the thing. If he's trying to use Dredd as a way to build some kind of hype for this film, I don't see it working. Dredd is such a sore spot when it comes to comic book movie fans, as well as just Judge Dredd fans in general, that like trying to invoke his name without it being attached to Mega City 1, the TV show, which we have no update on. Hopefully something will pop up soon. So you've got that. And then also like no sequel, which everyone really wants. I mean, so much so that even Dredd Day takes place in September, where people buy a copy of the movie in order to give it to someone who doesn't have it. There's a reason why when I go to Walmart still, Dredd 4K is still front and center on their displays, because a lot of people purchase Dredd. The movie has made a lot of money in its home video release, and yet for some reason, I think, you know what it is? I'm just going to say this. I think one of the reasons why they haven't made a sequel is because the original is still making too much damn money, because people are still buying, like, oh, why spend more money on a sequel when we can just every year people just buy the movie and give it to other people. We make money, we do nothing, they're mad at us, but you know what, they're going to continue doing this anyway. It's a weird theory. It's a weird theory, I'll admit, but it kind of seems like it could make some sense. Again, I'm waiting to see more on this info. Duncan Jones is a solid director, but we'll have to wait and see. This is not one that I'm probably going to follow super closely, but on this show we'll talk about it because it's comic book movie related, and it could be interesting nonetheless. But speaking of something that's bad, very bad, Keanu Reeves is not too sure that Bill and Ted 3 will happen. And this is no bueno, guys. This is no good. This is bad. This is not what we want. This is not at all what we want. It says here that strange things might not be afoot at the Circle K after all, despite recent reports that a third entry in the Bill and Ted franchise was finally and truly in the works. Ted Theodore Logan himself is now harshing our buzz. While promoting his new romantic crime drama Siberia, Keanu Reeves says that Bill and Ted will be on ice a little while longer, saying, "I don't know if it's a reality. We've been trying for a long time to get that film made, and it still has its challenges." But, okay, I mean, but like... Okay, you know what? Whatever my next thought would be, this article sums it up. It says here what those challenges are, given that Reeves and his longtime co-star Alex Winter and the franchise creators Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson are on board, and the script has been written with Galaxy Quest's Dean Parasot directing, and the film was shopped around at Cannes as recently as May. Reeves didn't elaborate, but maybe studios were thrown by the idea of these righteous dudes now being middle-aged parents who are tasked with writing a song to save existence. Maybe, but at the same time, I mean, it's been 30 years, man. Right? It's been 30 years, and people know the saga of the Wild Stallions. This is not an unknown thing. This is not an out of normal thing for fans of the franchise. And believe me, fans of the franchise that were kids when this movie came out, like myself, will take their kids to see this movie. They will take their kids. They'll go and they'll rewatch the excellent Stephen Herrick directed Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and then they'll suffer through Bogus Journey, which really was it was okay, but it wasn't the greatest thing in the world. But they'll come into this one going like, look, everyone's back from the original. You know, with exception of the director, right? But you got Galaxy Quest's director on board, which is a great thing, and that's the whole point. The whole point there is that like there's people involved that have talent, so there's that. Now it says Reeves didn't, perhaps Solomon is, as Solomon previously stated here, he and Matheson are holding out for the right collaborators who aren't just looking to cash in on the nostalgia for San Dimas. Okay, so if that's the thing, and the producers, the original creators, who in this case would be producers, are holding out on a good deal from a company that's not going to like, you know, screw them over for merchandising situations, let's break that down. Let's read between the lines on that one. They're waiting for Netflix. They are literally waiting for Netflix. That's what they want. They want to go to Netflix. They want to get Netflix to pay for it, or Amazon, or maybe, no, probably not even Hulu, but they definitely want to get Netflix or Amazon on board, because then that would end up being something that that they would let them have creative control on. I hate to break it to you, Solomon. It ain't going to be Amazon. Amazon is interested in this point in Lord of the Rings. Okay? And they want Lord of the Rings. They don't want Bill and Ted. Netflix, on the other hand, might be down. Like, you know, I mean, just $8 billion a year. They could easily do $8 billion a year. Just do that shit. Unfortunately, though, I don't quite know where things are going to be with this. I'm hoping that it's something that comes out of this soon. I don't want to look. Can we crowdfund this thing like they did with Veronica Mars and Super Troopers 2? Keanu Reeves, he made a lot of money off of the Matrix movies. He's still sitting on a lot of cash from John Wick. Can he self-finance it? Right? Like, I mean, if they want to do it, if they want to make it, they can make it. They can find the damn money one way or the other. If they are holding out, then that's kind of lame. Maybe they're holding out for John Wick 3 Parabellum to come out in order for it to conclude Keanu's involvement with John Wick and be probably the biggest movie of the franchise, and wait for that hype to hit. So then he's at like his top peak in terms of popularity. And as a result of that, then they can find themselves a good studio buyer, which won't be until March of next year anyway. So I have no freaking idea. All I can really hope for, though, is Alex Winter directs a behind the scenes documentary, because his Dark Web movie was actually pretty solid. And speaking of solid, the Metal Gear Solid script apparently is finished, and it's one of the coolest, weirdest, most Kojima things. And this is what the director of the movie said about turning in the script, which I'm not going to lie, does not fill me with hope. It does not fill me with hope at all. It says, Metal Gear Solid fans are used to sitting around and waiting. I mean, some of those cutscenes in Guns of the Patriots in particular took ages. You could probably grow a beard during Big Boss's epic speech. Hell, even Solid Snake is famous for kept you waiting, huh? Quote going on. I remember that. That was actually pretty good. The same can be said about the Metal Gear Solid movie, which has been in the works for years now, and yet we haven't really heard all that much about it. Which, yeah, I mean, it's been a while since Jordan Vogt-Roberts had talked about it, right? Or Vogt-Roberts. I don't know how to pronounce his middle name. But it does say here that director Jordan Vogt-Roberts confirmed the script is now finished and has been handed in. What's more is that the Kong Skull Island director said it's one of the best things he's ever clapped eyes on, saying, "We just turned in the script, and I think it's one of the best scripts I've ever read. It's one of the coolest, weirdest, most Kojima things." Even me, and being involved in it, I look at it as someone who's like, I would make the hell out of this movie. But if I wasn't involved in it, I would still look at that script and be like, holy shit. All right. So the thing with that is, there's no release date. I think Warner Brothers is working on it. I don't even know if Warner's is working on it. It's not coming out anytime soon, but let's be fair. Let's be 100% realistic when it comes to Kojima. The dude, oh my God, the guy's not that good of a writer. He's not that good of a writer. I'm sorry. Like, he's not that good of a writer. He's just not. All right. He knows how to tell a story. He knows how to direct the shit out of cutscenes. I'll give him credit on his directing. It's amazing. But when it comes to writing a cohesive story, one that follows a narrative, it's just, I mean, like, there are people out there that get it, I guess, like any kind of like avant-garde artist. There's people out there that just understand the complexity of their work. But Metal Gear Solid 5 it was poorly represented also in part by Konami. Let's be fair here. But I mean, if Konami is in any way involved in this movie, which I guarantee you they are, it's going to be bad. So if it's one of the most Kojima things out there, there was a gigantic flying blue whale on fire in the sky in the opening of Metal Gear Solid 5, right? Like, that kind of crap is not going to translate well to audiences going to see a movie that have no context or time to invest into these cutscenes. This is the problem with Metal Gear Solid. If you remove a lot of the fantastical shit, keeping the base elements of, let's say, Psycho Mantis there, then it'd be fine. The audience can relate to that. But when you start going into some of the weirder, out there, crazier shit, people they're just going to go, this is going to be too much for them, right? Look at Death Stranding. What we saw of Death Stranding in E3 was garbage. It was terrible. It was bad. It was just bad, right? It was just like, oh, is Norman Reedus walking with a baby and a corpse on his back at some point? No, it was bad. Kojima is a fantastic director, and he knows how to craft these really crazy worlds, which are amazing. But to model anything after what he's done from a narrative aspect is only going to detriment your project. And this could get people mad at me, and that's totally fine. I'm okay with that. But really, Kojima is just I'm okay with this movie taking its time, because after Metal Gear Solid 5, I think I'm just done with Kojima as a whole. And I'll be fair, a lot of, like I said, that was Konami, but at the same time, he still wrote a lot of it, and a lot of it was pretty bad. And Death Stranding doesn't look any better. But that actually wraps up today's episode of the show. Curious to know your guys' thoughts on this one. Let me know in the comments. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This has been $3 Theater. If you guys haven't already, please thumbs up the video, subscribe, and check back often for more content from me. This show will be going on like this. Probably this is easier for me to make. And people tend to like the longer form stuff in order to listen to while they go off. So I just want you guys to know that that's happening. And I will talk to you guys later. Have yourself a fantastic day, and peace out. If you enjoyed this video, please consider becoming a patron today for just $1 per month over at patreon.com/mundanematt.